How are you?
It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start by asking you, first of all, what do you do exactly? And and how did you get to it? Because it is kind of interesting. I think it is the first time that I'm interviewing and having a conversation with someone like you in your industry. So it's super interesting for me and the people that are listening. So I want to hear, how did you get to it? It's a very specific industry and very what made you choose this path?
Yeah, so I'm a crime reporter by background. I covered murders across the city for about 10 years. And I covered for publications like the New York Times, People Magazine, ProPublica, the Boston Globe. It's an interesting, as a crime reporter, there's sort of two different ways that people think of crime stories. And one of them is sort of from this, criminal justice angle. What are the systems telling us about, what's happening in our country, right? And then on the other side, there's this huge industry that looks at true crime. And that's the fascinating, gory details of people's worst moments. And people read that second set of stories. Yeah. And that's where a lot of news organizations make their money, is from the gory details of people's worst moments. And that to me feels very
unfair.
It's kind of gross. It's like an added trauma on top of the actual trauma of what occurred. So I was a criminal justice reporter for about 10 years, ended up writing for a tabloid, ended up delving into true crime, and felt like I woke up every morning just trying not to do harm, right?
Right. And it's hard because you deal with so much nasty information and
you sort of lose faith in humanity a bit too. And so I parted ways from that, and I then built a literacy nonprofit for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth. And I teach creative writing workshops to young people with criminal records. The reason that I made that shift was because I was tired of witnessing the same thing again and again, writing about it, and nothing changing. And I felt like there was an answer through education, through writing. I felt like the big thing that I was seeing is that just because you've experienced trauma in your life does not mean you're going to become a criminal, right?
Exactly.
But if you're not able to process that trauma, harm will occur. And maybe that comes out in crime. Maybe that comes out in the person just never being able to live out their life the way that they want to, right? But if you don't process your trauma, then you never actually make another leap. And there's this whole body of work that looks at expressive writing and this idea that if you just writing down your story, you don't have to read it aloud, you don't have to publish it somewhere, just the act of writing it down takes these unprocessed feelings that we have and it gives them structure, and just writing it down is part of the healing process. And people who write about their trauma, even if it's just in a journal that no one reads, they tend to do significantly better in getting through that trauma.
Wow.
And that's even measured up against talking with a therapist, which is also a very important thing to do. But writing your own story, putting it into words, you can look at something and you can say, this is how I feel. And then you say, actually, no, it's not. This is how I thought I felt. It's actually this, right? The writing, the editing, for sure. You're processing it out.
A lot of times when you write, you realize that your emotions can be, the bad can be like 2%. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, it takes over our emotions and thoughts. And we think, oh my God, it's 100% bad. But when you write it down, you're like, okay, it's not so bad. So let me put it into perspective. It's amazing. You took that world, which can be nasty and bad and negative, and you turn it into, how can I heal it? How can I help them? That's something that for me is truly amazing, because again, a lot of reporters will just enjoy the item, the whatever, just keep discovering more and more criminals, but you actually want to wanted to help from like for me, it sounds like from a very pure place in your heart, which is really nice.
I appreciate that. No, I think that all of us, no matter what, we all have things that we have to get off our chest. We all have things we have to process and think through. And, maybe they aren't, the traumas that other people have experienced, but everybody has a story, and everybody, I think, I think that we're all broken, right? And it's a lifetime work of trying to heal. And if you don't do that, then your jagged parts cut deepest into the people that draw close, into the people that love you.
You see the people who haven't, gone to therapist or healed their trauma, or you see that it's more likely they will commit crime?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it's really easy, especially as women, right? Like, we want to be able to identify the dangers. We want to be able to understand, if this person has gone through this, what is the likelihood that they could hurt me, right? But I think while it's a really interesting question, we have to go one step further back. And that is, what are the underlying issues that are causing the harm and trauma in anyone, right? Which then ultimately leads to crime. So you've got to look at this from like a systemic point of view, right? And so we live in a world that is very stratified, socioeconomically, racially, by religion. There's all these different ways that we can other people, and systems often are developed to keep certain groups out or down, right? Where it is convenient to keep people in poverty for the system to go to go forward. And so what I see in lots of people, whether they commit crime or not, right? But when you have all these different things that are coming at you from different directions, right? And maybe, and this is just a hypothetical case, but maybe this is someone who endures child abuse, as a kid, who maybe witnesses a parent being abused by the other parent, who is, growing up on food stamps, and money is always tight, and college is not something that they get to dream about. You go to school and you're anxious and you've not been sleeping, and you act out and you get in trouble, and you're told that you're a bad kid and that you have no future. The school to prison pipeline is a huge thing.
But how can you really take care of that? Like, how can you there's a lot of people who suffer in I see some communities that are very poor. And how can you truly, is there like hope for I know for some people, you see some kids that are grown up and they became, millionaires, and they have a special story, but a lot of them don't. Mm-hmm. So do you think there's something to do in the system, in the education?
So I don't think there's like a one-stop fix, but I do think most things can be fixed within education. And if you look at how our country doles out money, we don't put a lot behind education compared to, say, the military, right? For instance. Yeah. If we invested more in education, I do believe that there would be a true ability for people to see a different life for themselves. And what I've seen with the young people that I work with my creative writing program is a lot of these kids are super smart, super creative,
talented,
really talented, could absolutely do whatever, but were very much pushed out of the school system. I had a young man who, when he first started coming to my class, he just put his head down on the desk and would sleep. And I was like, oh, I really hope that you join us, but I didn't push. Yeah. Because you just never know what's going on in somebody's life. Exactly. You don't know if, maybe this is the safe space for him to sleep, or if he just needs to kind of tune out.
Wow.
And a few classes in, we were reading a story by James Baldwin, and it was very much focused on place. It was a story out of Harlem, and a lot of the young people I work with are either from Harlem or the Bronx. And this young man was from the Bronx, and he raised his head and started talking kind of about the Bronx and in defense of his neighborhood. It became this really beautiful debate between several of the young people in the class. And after that moment, it was like that was the connecting point for him. After that, he never slept in my class. He was the first kid to read his own writing aloud. And a few months later, he graduated high school. Wow. And I actually watched this happen in real time, where he connected to the material and opted in. Wow. And I had gone back, and his school records from teachers before this class had written about how he was just a really bad kid. The only time that they could ever handle him was when he was asleep. So he was told to go to sleep, right?
Right.
Like he was pushed
defined
out
as
and
a
he was
bad,
defined, and he was
right.
defined as
That's the
as a
worst
bad
you could
kid.
do to a child.
And I
yeah.
really do think, particularly with kids, but this happens to all of us in whatever circumstance, whether
Yeah.
it's from a parent, from a partner, from a friend, when somebody you love and care about or respect tells you you are something, it is hard to believe
Very
otherwise, right? Especially when you're a child.
For sure.
And so I think that like he really demonstrates that school to prison pipeline, but his story also demonstrates what can happen if you reconnect with education and you're given education as a means to exploring yourself and your own story and figuring a way out.
Also, he probably realized that he knows how to debate and how to speak and how
Exactly.
to like that's a talent.
Yeah, it's a talent.
And it's something that a lot of times in the tradition, schools can be pushed away. If you're not good at math or history or whatever, then you're bad.
Yeah.
And you're not. I see it also in my kids. Like it's very hard. They come home, if they didn't do well in the math test, they feel like they're nothing, which is, I fight for that. I don't care. You are amazing. I hated math. I keep telling my kid, like, I hated math. And the teachers now are working with me. They're investing with me. You know what I'm saying? It's a full circle. Like I was this bad student who couldn't learn, who couldn't do. But I didn't let anyone bring me down. Like I knew what I'm capable of, what's my talent, and I used it. And now I'm doing business and investments and real estate, and those people are investing with me.
Yeah.
I keep telling my daughter, I was like, that's just because she's a teacher, it doesn't mean it's someone that you look up and like, believe every word she's saying.
Yeah.
You need to respect her 100%. But also know who you are. Don't let anyone, because a lot of times those people, principals, teachers can really shake a kid up.
It's true. And I think we also overemphasize the importance of certain subjects at the expense of others. When you were talking about how people sort of like, oh, the smart kid is really good at math. Actually, we need a whole spectrum of people with different talents,
100%.
right? To really we need that for a better world, right? It is. It's a puzzle. And we need that for a better world, and we need that for a better community. And we can't overemphasize one thing at the expense of another.
Exactly. I agree with you. And I think it's very important to say it out loud, especially if there are teachers who are listening, because it's really important for the kids. So she, like my daughter gets that at home. She gets so much confidence and she sees me, and like, I encourage that. But a lot of times, especially when we were kids, in the older generation, it was very hard. Like now there's more awareness. So I heard you were dealing with the Anna Delvey case. I have to tell you, that's like one of the cases they really made me really, really question. Like I was upset. Yeah. I was upset because I see a young girl, pretty, ambitious, very talented, and I was like, why? Like that's something that usually I'm not busy with. Like I don't see the news, but that's something like stood out. What do you think happened there as far as like personality, trauma? Like what did you notice there?
Anna Delvey is an interesting case because she, a lot of people tried to put labels on her to better understand her. I mean, I think we see this, even the label like criminal, right? Or psychopath, or, with some people I've covered, I've had police be like, he's an animal, whatever, right? We always put labels to differentiate an other and be like, they're this way, but we're not this way.
Right.
Even like the idea of like good people and bad people, right? It's the same thing. It's like, what is a good person, right? Like, what is a bad person? Like,
but it's a very strong point what you said, because people love to say in order to bring themselves up, in order to feel good about themselves.
We're always using labels to other people to differentiate ourselves, to just say that we're better.
But you know what I've realized lately? That usually the people who love to bring down others and speak about others, for example, people are always, oh, she's a scammer, he's a scammer, he's this, are usually the biggest scammers. And no, yeah. I realized that. Yeah. I realized that. And then I hear like, oh, she's claiming to protect everyone. Like I've met a girl who's claiming to protect everyone, and she's always busy with other people's life, and like she did this, and like, you know, those people who are extremely busy, it's not their profession. She's not a journalist, and she's busy with other people's life, what she did and her clients, and then you realize, oh my God, people lost with her. She did bad to people. I'm like, maybe that's the method they're approaching, to bring down other people to make themselves look good, and like, I'm like, oh my God, this world is getting too confusing.
So I think that I actually think when somebody really bothers or upsets you, right? I'm not saying, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder what happened here.
Right.
When somebody really gets under your skin, when you start hating that person, right? You have to think, okay, what is it
triggering
about this person that is triggering me, that is making me feel like, you know, they're so terrible? And usually it's that there's something about them that reminds you of yourself.
It's a reflection.
It's a reflection. And you don't want to see the reflection.
No.
You know, and so you immediately start finding ways to other and to differentiate.
It's funny.
This is not me. But actually, the more you argue it, it's like, oh no, I'm seeing some similarities.
Yeah, but you have to be very honest in order to do that.
You do.
And I always do it with my therapist. And she loves it about me because I'm coming to like really do the work. But I have to tell you, regarding Anna Delvey, I wasn't upset. I wasn't like, I didn't hate her. I was just like, I felt so bad because I saw this beautiful girl. I wanted to hug her. I felt like it happened because she didn't get what she deserved to get.
Well, and you were asking sort of about the traumas like leading up to. And I think that there was a very ambitious young woman who had gone through a lot. You know, she was from Russia. She had been sort of separated from her family who had moved to Germany. She had to navigate her life in Russia on her own, largely for years. And a lot of people used the term psychopath to describe her. And I don't think that was fair at all. We talked in depth about, you know, how, you know, she was, you know, people urged her to go to therapy, but she didn't feel comfortable kind of talking with a therapist. This is once she had gone to jail. She didn't feel.
Spoke to her after she's gone to jail.
After jail, she talked about like people had urged her to go to therapy and she didn't feel comfortable, you know, like doing that and sharing her life. That she knew that the therapist would make certain determinations about who and what she was that she didn't feel were really true or accurate. I think there was a very intelligent woman who saw a lot of holes in our societal system, figured out loopholes and ways to get there, which, by the way, is a survival tactic, right?
But she could have done it and really being successful. Like, why did she?
Yeah, and exactly. And then she came up short. Part of that, I think, is that she was a woman in her 20s, right? And it usually takes a few tries. I think she didn't think all the way through. I think that you can have hopes and dreams, whether she ever planned to actually fulfill them or not. She's always said she did, but whether it was a con or it was sort of playing the game until you win the game.
That's a very extreme fake it until you win it.
It's very, but like, yeah, but I think that she was in over her head, right? She was able to make these
like she didn't necessarily plan it.
Yeah,
from the beginning, she's like, okay, I'm gonna do a con. I'm gonna do this.
I think it led just unraveled, and I think that she got far enough in that she couldn't really get out. And I think that a lot of people were interested in her story because the victims were wealthy, connected people who were ultimately made whole again, right? But you don't want to undermine the fact that there was, and this happens with any sort of, con artist type story, there were relationships that were built along the way and friendships that were built along the way. And I think that there were people, rich or not, who felt hurt by the broken trust. And that I don't want to undervalue.
For sure.
But from a monetary standpoint, people were made whole.
When you met her, did you feel the need to help her? Did you feel like there's hope there?
I mean, I think that there's hope in everyone. I believe everyone has the ability to change. I don't think most people do.
Right.
Most people don't change because it is the work of a lifetime to go through that. And it's painful and it's difficult and it requires you to look in the mirror and see yourself. And most people do not want to do that.
Right.
But of course, I believe everyone can change. I will say that the first time I met her, one of the first things she said to me was, "I'm not a good person."
Wow.
And I thought that that was really, really interesting. For one, I don't really believe in good and bad people. I think there's good and bad in all of us. And I think some of us lean more one way than the other.
Yeah.
But I do also believe that everybody is redeemable.
Everybody?
I think that there is the potential. Like like deep within the soul, at the very root, there is the potential. Not saying you're going to get there, right? But I think that there's always that potential. I believe in the potential of people, even if you can't make bets on the potential of people. But when she said, "I'm not a good person," it was interesting to me because I've interviewed, you know, a mother who killed her child. I've interviewed, you know, people caught up in, you know, the narco life. I've interviewed so many people where others would say that is a bad person. And all of them have always told me, whether I ask them or not, I'm a good person, right? It's so important to people to say, I'm a good person. I'm a good person.
Even if she killed her daughter.
Right. And she told me, she said, I'm a good person. And so when Anna Delvey, who had killed no one, right, who had stolen money, goes, I'm not a good person, it was interesting.
It shows awareness.
There was a level of awareness that was far beyond what most people have, which is actually the first indicator that you can change.
Exactly.
The thing was, though, as I got to know her over the years, and I really enjoyed her company. She's a great conversation. She's fascinating, right? But I was like, you're not going to change because you don't want to. You have the potential for it. You have you can see yourself. You can look yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm not a good person. But you're not, at this point, I don't think she's going to make the leap to change.
She's still in jail?
She's on house arrest. She's been on house arrest since fall of 2022.
And she lives in the U.S.?
So she's in New York with an ankle monitor.
And she still doesn't want to change. Like shit.
I mean, I can't, you know, speak for her if she wants to change or not. You know, but and I don't believe that she's busy, you know, committing crimes as of this moment. But change is not just about behavior, right? It's internal, right? So she like everybody else has the potential to change. But even people with the perception and the self-awareness, many of them never get beyond that.
Yep, it takes a lot of hard work. Do you see that criminals are, you know, after they come out of jail, do you see a lot of them committing crime again? Or do you see that it's really, jail is really helping them to transform?
So it's interesting because one of the big words that is used when people talk about jails and why it's important to put people behind bars, they talk about rehabilitation.
Right.
And I use air quotes here because that's not what our jails are doing.
Right.
When someone goes to jail, it is inevitably going to be a traumatic experience. You're cut off from the rest of the world. You are housed.
You have control in your life.
You have no control in your life. You are housed with a bunch of other people who are accused of other crimes, some of them the worst things that you can possibly do, murder, rape, right?
Yeah.
Child abuse, right? So you're now in a community of people who have been accused of the worst things.
What is your chances?
So what are your chances? You then have to realize, you know, you're cut off from your family, you're cut off from your friends. The only people in your life are your correction officers and other people accused of crimes. There's tons of abuse that happens within jail, right? Guards to inmates, inmates on inmates. So many young people are sexually abused, right? You see this in women's prisons. You see this in adult prisons. You know, we have something here in New York called Raise the Age, which made it so that younger kids were not put with adults, but that's not really happening. And it's constantly up for debate, right? And even within juvenile detention centers, those older kids sometimes are abusing the younger kids. So this is a traumatic, and this doesn't always happen, but it's widespread and perverse. And what you see is that going to jail is an extra traumatic experience. No matter what happened before, all the trauma that perhaps led to a crime being committed, or you know, being accused of a crime that you didn't commit, right? The actual trauma of going through a trial, being in jail, and then it's very difficult to go back back to your community after you've been in jail.
sure.
That's a huge
Humiliation
stigma, right? And so reentry, those first few days are some of the most crucial and most important for getting people back on their feet and back out. You then see that once you have a criminal record, it's very hard to get a job. There are some rules around that, particularly in New York, but ultimately a lot of business people are not going to hire you if you have a record, right? And so there's all sorts of things that will just follow you throughout life that continue to make it harder whether you've changed or not.
It's a stain that you can't take off.
Exactly. And so I think that jails are not rehabilitative. They should be, but that would require a complete systemic change to make that happen.
But it's ridiculous because what they're trying to do, you're not, if criminals are going out of jail and they're the same or even worse, then what did you do here?
Well, I think...
Or maybe the goal is not to make people better. Maybe the goal is just to control them for a few years and then, do it again, we'll control you again. We're making money out of you.
I would agree with that. We have,
insane.
The U.S. has millions of people who are incarcerated. Our country has more people incarcerated than any other country. So you either have to say that Americans are just worse than the rest of the world, or you have to say we have an incarceration problem, right? We are incarcerating too many people.
Yeah.
It's a business.
It's a business, yeah.
It's a business.
That's what it sounds like.
And it's not a business that, it's like dating apps, right? Their goal is not to get you, married with 4 children. Their goal is to get you to continue dating. Well, it's the same in prisons. The goal is
I feel like you're doing something very different.
To keep you there. And so my frustration as a reporter was that I felt that I was writing the same story again and again.
Wow.
And a lot of the stories I covered were young people, and one kid would be accused of shooting another kid. And I was like, both kids died that day, right? One went to jail and one is in a coffin. And neither of those are happy stories, right? And I was very close to my grandmother, and she was a school teacher for many, many years. And she taught through desegregation in Mississippi. My family is from Mississippi. And she was always telling me, I wish you would write happy stories.
Wow.
And all of the stories I wrote were just these horrifically sad, tales of death. And shortly after she died, I parted ways with the tabloid and I started Next Page, which is the creative writing programs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth. And I feel that it's a happy story.
If you have a mission, you have a truly such an important mission, and it's much better than you literally saving lives.
Well, I think the important thing is that it's a correction on the education system that we have currently. It is giving young people the tools to change their own lives, right, to save themselves. And I think that while I've been very focused on young people with records, I think that the work that we're doing in our class is stuff that really anybody could benefit from, right? Because what we're doing is
it's a class that people has to come through Zoom. So
I go to reentry sites and detention centers, and I teach the class in person. And we have journals and gel pens, and kids are writing by hand, and we do exercises with a ball, we read a book, we do lots of different activities.
You're kind of a therapist.
Well, not a licensed therapist, but there's a therapeutic element. It is absolutely therapeutic writing because expressive writing about your past, delving into those difficult things is really important.
I can tell you that even when I do it, I feel like, every morning that I write in a journal, again, it puts in perspective. And a lot of times we forget. Even though we're very blessed and lucky, we can forget.
Absolutely.
You wake up and you right away with work and clients and all this headache and kids, and I have 3 kids, I'm married, and But every time I journal, I'm like, okay, this is what I have, this is what I'm struggling, but it's really small. Let's deal with it, but it's really small. I don't want to walk around in the world that day with the energy of my problems because they're really small. So only writing can help you do that.
I think that so the beautiful thing about reading, right, is that it expands your mind. You're able to see a lot of different worlds, a lot of different perspectives. The beautiful thing about writing is that it allows you to see your own perspective. You're able to start to better understand yourself. And I'm always telling my students, like, it's okay if you don't like what you wrote. It doesn't have to be quote unquote good, right? Write it down. We get to go back, we get to revise, and actually discovering you hate something that you wrote is also a success.
Exactly.
Because you're able to say, I don't like this because I don't like the way I did it and I want to do it this way now. Or you can say, I don't feel that this really represented what I was trying to say. How do I get better at saying that exact thing?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes through the revision process. And a young man that I've been teaching recently said that he never had the words to express his emotions before. And through this class, it's reshaped his way of thinking, and he has those words.
Wow.
And that is everything that I
Huge
wanted to do.
achievement. Yeah.
That was he told me my mission, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the mission. That is what I think. He's far and away ahead of men twice his age, right? Like the fact that he can actually put words to his emotions, he can actually express how he feels. That is the difference between, falling apart, however that looks, whether that's, committing crimes or just not being able to function in society or not being able to have a healthy relationship or however that looks, right? It's the difference between that and being able to really see and do anything in your life.
And also take accountability, take responsibility.
Exactly.
It's something that, once you realize that, you're like, okay, I have control.
Well, and I think that there's so much that we don't have control over, right? Particularly the systemic issues that I talked about, and the challenges,
the
et cetera,
parents,
and even other people in our lives, right? But what can be beautiful is even the things that you don't have control over, there are ways through writing to gain control over your own self within that. And so, one of the exercises that we did recently was we were reading a book, and the book had to do with a young man who had been shot and killed, and his grandmother was reflecting on their last conversation and how she wished she'd said other things. And so we did a journal entry where we thought about somebody who, the conversation was interrupted. We never got the conversation. Maybe the person moved away or they died or, whatever. And we wrote that conversation, what we wish we could have said to the person, right? And kids were writing to, one young man wrote to his brother who's incarcerated and talked about how there were all these things that he wanted to learn about how to be a man and he couldn't ask them, right? And people were writing to their dead father.
Beautiful.
A young woman wrote to her dead father and was like, this is really hard for me, but my teacher said it would help and I'm willing to try, right? And so here's what's been going on in my life that you haven't been able to see. Wow. And these are really beautiful moments because those conversations were impossible for them to have in real life. But they were able to put them on paper. They were able to say, this is what I'm missing. This is what I don't have. And even being able to say that can provide a certain level of closure, right? That then allows you to say, okay, this person's not in my life. Who can I share this with? Or this is really affecting me. And how can I make sure that it doesn't, fall back on me or somebody else I care about?
That's beautiful. What do you think about forgiveness?
I think it's the only way forward.
So if somebody really harms you, do bad things to you, try to bring you down, ruin your character, jealousy, there's obviously when you're, moving a certain direction, there's more, again, people are triggered by a lot of things, especially people who are with you when you just started out and then they see your growth. And sometimes, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why would you do it? I only helped you. Why would you try to hurt me? Yeah. And I'm talking about myself. For me, it's very easy to forgive. Okay. Because I just I'm busy with, moving forward. Yeah. But is it good? Is it sometimes I feel like maybe I'm too naive. I don't want to. What is your take on forgiving and also trusting? Because obviously it ruins a sort of, I remember myself 5 years ago, trusted more easily than I trust people now. And also trying to put sense into people's behavior. That's something that also put me in a lot of frustration. Yeah. Because it doesn't make sense. I'm why would you do it?
I think most people's behavior most of the time, and I'm not talking about just criminals, I'm talking about everybody, doesn't make sense, right? And that is people's traumas enacting in other ways. I think so much of how somebody expresses themselves in a particular moment is not about that particular moment. It's about something off stage that happened a long time ago that they've never processed. And I've seen that with my students. My students are fantastic. There was one time, not in class, but outside of class, and I'm talking about a former group of students, not my current students. And, one kid said something kind of ugly to another, like a your mama joke. I mean, like real, just minor, like kids being kids, right?
Yeah.
And the young woman got really upset because, it's other things that are happening, other things that are triggered from that moment, right? And several of the young men in the class got really angry at him because he had upset, this woman. And, some of them, like, she's like my sister, like I have to protect her, right? And no fight actually broke out, but it came really close. And I was like, hold on a second. What's going on? Like, this was a your mama joke. This was like nothing. And I realized that no one in that room was responding to the your mama joke. Everyone in that room was responding to something that had happened to them. Maybe they had witnessed another woman who had been abused in some way. Maybe they themselves had been told that they were worthless, right? And that goes even to the kid who had made the your mama joke. Everybody was really upset and angry,
really about that,
right? And that is so natural. I mean, I think about, relationships I've been in where, somebody says something and I'm just completely crushed. And it's not really what they said. It's all the other things that were said leading up to that thing being said from other people, right? And it all kind of comes down into this one moment. And so, you ask about, forgiveness and trust and accountability, and I want to get to that. But first, I think that this idea of forgiveness is like really well illustrated from a story that I reported a few years ago. And was actually the story that inspired Next Page to begin. And it's a story of forgiveness. And I covered a shooting in Brownsville, which is in Brooklyn. And it was a 14-year-old was accused of shooting and killing a 16-year-old. And the specifics of that case are very complicated. But the important thing was that I ended up, the case went on, drug on for 4 years, from 2018 to 2022. And I covered that case for that 4 years, following it through the court system, the juvenile court system. And I was in touch with both fathers, the father of the child who died and the father of the child who was incarcerated. And the night that Timi Oyabola was shot and killed, I went to his parents' home, and his father said, I forgive the child that killed my son.
Wow.
That was the night his son was murdered, right? That was hours after the shooting.
And you felt it was a real forgiveness?
It was, yes. It was a moment that was so profound that I had been writing notes in my phone, and I stopped writing because it was like, I'm a forgiving person. That level of forgiveness was wild to me. Yeah. And he was a preacher, and he was religious, and I think that was a big part of it, right?
Also, he didn't want to suffer more. He didn't want to add suffering.
Exactly. And he had a lot of pain, which he expressed, at the sentencing. He gave a statement, and he addressed the young man who had been 14 and was now 18, and he told him, this is what I've lost as a result of what you've, done. And he also said, I really hope that you find God. Like, I really hope that you are able to forgive yourself. And that story was like, oh, what happens when there's grace and forgiveness? Like what does that look like, right? And I think that it's a complete and total game changer. Yeah, like we can, because what that father did by forgiving that child, publicly forgiving him too, to his face. A lot of people go through life harming each other, and with anger in their hearts, and really the anger and the hatred and the rage, the only thing that they really do, right, is they end up harming you. Yeah. You're unable to move on. Yeah. You're stuck in that place. And for the other person, a lot of times when people do something wrong, they don't apologize. They don't take accountability.
And you want that closure.
And you need that closure. Yeah. But I also think in publicly forgiving him, I think sometimes a lot of people who have not been forgiven in life, have not been in relationships where forgiveness is given, they can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
Right? And so for that young man to be told that he was forgiven is also powerful, not just for the man who forgave him and said, I'm releasing this from my heart, but for him too. People can think, oh, there's no level of accountability. There's no way I can go back. I've messed up your life. I've messed up my life. It's over. And when he says, I publicly forgive you, that actually could be a life-changing moment for that child as well. And so you were asking about, the importance of forgiveness and also how that kind of plays into trust. And I think forgiveness and grace are the most important things that we can ever experience in life, both ways.
Releasing,
in giving,
it's
and
healing
in receiving.
yourself. Yeah,
it is healing yourself, and it can be healing towards others. And I think that if we all stayed in this sphere of
it's
never,
it's also like letting go your ego. It's a lot of
for
ego.
Sure.
So
for sure,
when you're releasing that and you're choosing your well-being, then I got to a point after a year of really someone who's trying like whatever, or her own triggers. But I got to a point when I felt like she was my shield. She's protecting me. Like I blessed her. I'm blessing her. And that feeling, like that state of mind is so releasing and freeing me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's suffering if I'm going to hold the anger or why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Asking the question, I said, I'm stopping right there.
Yeah.
First of all, the one thing I did, I kept quiet.
Yeah.
It's something that I suggest everyone. Quiet is always win. Don't respond back when someone wants to hurt you. They want you to respond.
I think also you then are having to go back and say, oh, I shouldn't have done it this way.
Exactly. Yeah. Every time I said something, I regretted it. So I learned in life, I'm quiet. I'm continuing. I know who I am. I'm with my truth. I'm surrounded by amazing friends and family. That's all I care about. And you get to a point when you realize it's not even her. It's a message. You're getting a message, learn from it what you can, grow from it, and use it as a shield. And the moment you're shifting your mindset, I'm like, oh my God, thank you. She's protecting me now. I don't know how. I don't know from what, but I choose to believe it. And again, it's all about our mind.
It is.
So it's, she's becoming my shield. And I'm like, thank you.
I think that there's a significance of, it's always important to forgive. I think trust is in a slightly different lane, right? If somebody, harms you, you can forgive them. You don't have to say, because I forgave you, I now trust you again.
No.
That trust has to
no axes.
Trust has to be earned back, right?
Yeah.
And there are levels of accountability that can lead to being able to trust a person again, even if they've hurt you.
That's boundaries.
Right?
That's like basic.
But I do think, you can forgive. You can also say, I forgive, but I don't trust. But you can also then say, yeah, there are levels of accountability that somebody might go through, and you might be able to trust that person again, right? Like you can't close yourself off to that as well, because I do think that we live in a society where it is hard to trust, and that doesn't make good relationships. If you aren't able to trust people, you're not really communing with them at all, right? So I think that trust is incredibly important. It's not good if you don't trust people, but you do have to be careful with who you trust, and you can't just trust, you can't just throw it around to anyone.
Also boundaries.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely
something that we all had to work on, obviously, as we grow. I used to give so much, and I realized it could even hurt people when you give them too much.
Yeah,
you can literally hurt them, and that's also I took responsibility, and I said, okay, let me see how I can do it without them being relying on me or independent on me, and then, that hurts them.
Yeah.
So you learn as you grow. But I think boundaries is super important. And I love what you said about the story, because if he could forgive someone from killing his kid, then who we are to not let it go. And it just hurts us at the end of the day. We want to be free. Yeah. And in order to be free, you have to let it go. You have to forgive.
Yeah. So I think it goes both ways. I think receiving and witnessing forgiveness given to yourself, I think that can be a real game changer for being able to then give forgiveness to somebody else, to being able to forgive yourself. So I think it's a win-win on both sides.
Has to start internally for sure. That's amazing. Emily, anything else you want to share or give even a tip, maybe in writing, maybe something, because you're doing really, really a special mission.
Thank you.
And I think could help a lot of, especially the younger generation, What do you suggest, even kids now that in school, what can they do to raise their confidence?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think not even just for kids. I think the work that we're doing in our writing workshops are really for everyone, you know? Like
Sure.
everyone needs to be able to go back and look at their life, look in the mirror, see where they went wrong, see where they went right, see who they need to forgive, see who they need to ask forgiveness from, right? We all should be more accountable to one another.
Yeah.
We live in a world that is so divided and fraught with anger and hatred. And if we want something, if we want a better world, that starts with forgiveness, that starts with grace, that starts with compassion, that starts with being able to trust one another again.
Going on social media and just commenting positive. You don't have to comment at hate, like you just comment a heart.
There's so
spread
much.
the light.
There's so much that we could do to be kinder to one another. And you know, we all have things that are in our past that we've not been able to process and heal from. And sometimes just writing it down is a helpful start. Seeing how you feel about something, writing that unfinished conversation, whatever it is that you need to do to get right with yourself, right? Do that thing, whether you have a criminal record or not, right? I'm doing this specifically for young people with criminal records because I think that they have been left out of the system time and time again because they were pushed out of education. Hope. And I feel like they deserve this special thing. Yeah. This is, you know, of all my life work, this is what matters most to me, is what I'm doing right now.
Wow.
But I also think that everybody could benefit from it. You know, you don't have to wait to do something that you're, you know, regretting for the rest of your life to actually start taking accountability of your past and forging ahead in a different way with more insight into who you are. I think too much of the education system is focused on testing and getting your degree and getting the paperwork and check, check, check. And that's not what education is about. Education is supposed to be exploratory. It's supposed to be this place where you learn about the world and yourself and how you relate to it. And that's what we're doing in this class with Next Page. And that's what everyone can do just by opening, you know, a journal and writing a few things down.
Wow. Wow. 100 to that. Wow. Thank you so much, Emily. It's a true inspiration. And I hope everyone can hear it and use it. And you're literally making the world better. I feel like that's such a great job. You found yourself from the negative, from this world, you shifted it. And that's amazing to me. You're really making a change, and it's something that much needed in this world. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming. And I hope that will work out today, you know, whoever's listening, myself, everyone, with more hope, more kindness, more compassion. It's beautiful.
Thank you.